I messed up tonight. I lost another fight. I still mess up, but I'll just start again. I keep falling down. I keep on hitting the ground. I always get enough. See what's next. Birds don't just fly. They fall down and get up. Nobody learns without getting it wrong. I won't give up, no, I won't give in till I reach the end and then I'll start again. No, I won't leave. I wanna try everything. I wanna try even though I could fail.
Hello, and welcome back to the Godfather Minute, the minute-by-minute podcast where, wait, wrong movie, we aren't the Godfather. It could have fooled me looking at this minute. We are the Zootopia Minute. We are the minute-by-minute podcast where we review and analyze the award-winning animated film from 2016, Zootopia. I am your co-host for this evening, Choco, and I'm joined with my other co-host,
Simul, and I suppose it might not be evening, depending on what time you're listening to this. It's kind of evening for both of us as we're recording, though, I suppose.
Yeah, it's apparently hailing all the way in Seattle where Simul is.
Yeah, we had some hail today. It was kind of weird. I'm looking outside, and it looks like it might have actually been snowing, but it's all just hail stuck to the ground.
Kind of looks like Tundra Town, doesn't it?
Yeah, very appropriate. All right, what minute is this?
All right, well, this is minute the big 49er, so 49.
Hey, this is perfect for your, for you Californian.
Yeah, Californian pride. All right, and we start at 4900, where Mr. Big is finishing his sentence. You disrespected grandmama, who I buried in that skunk butt rug. That's what she was buried in. And we continue with a little back and forth between Mr. Big, Nick, Judy hops, get it? And
I do get it.
They then go on a bit before he's about to ice them, and we end at minute 49:59, where Mr. Big's daughter runs in and says, "Oh, Daddy, it's time for my blank." So, another cliffhanger for us to follow for next week.
Yes, indeed. And I like this minute a lot because it's more of that kind of like mafia kind of feel because of those Godfather references there.
Godfather references, which, again, we've never seen Godfather, so we have no idea if these are actually references or just references of references of references.
Yeah, though incidentally, the other night I was hanging out with some friends and we played, I forget the name of the game, but it was like a mafia-themed game where you had every person playing was in charge of a crime family, basically, and you had to try and kill off the other crime families. It was pretty interesting.
Were they all Italian crime family, or were they like Russians and Yakuza and cartels?
Actually, it wasn't. So I think I had, and it was cool because a lot of it was based off of real criminals.
Right.
I had the Capone family.
Ooh.
Then there was one team that was like all like bank robbers.
And Capone got arrested for tax evasion. So
yes, indeed, just like Nick.
Yep.
Hey, it ties in. Look at that. That's perfect. Wow, I hadn't even thought about that, but yeah, I guess that ties in with this minute quite a bit. Nick was placed under arrest by Judy for tax evasion,
which is kind of crazy because the U.S. government could not get him on any other charges. They couldn't get him on his like murders, his crime syndicate, nothing. They could only get him on tax evasion, which is kind of crazy. That's how much power the U.S. government has in some areas.
And this is Al Capone, not Nick Wilde.
Yes.
As far as we know, Nick Wilde hasn't murdered anyone or anything like that.
But he has been arrested. Well, Judy has got him for the same crime that the U.S. government arrested Al Capone for, tax evasion.
Indeed.
So there we go.
Another Californian. You go.
All right.
This is like the California episode, dude. It's 49.
Well, the mafia is also very, very big in Vegas. In fact, Vegas was actually, if you think about it, founded by mob bosses, including the big one, Bugsy Siegel.
Well, Paradise was, perhaps. I don't know about the city of Las Vegas.
Well, the idea of what Vegas is, the Vegas Strip, was basically Bugsy Siegel's idea. But now it's owned by like 3 casino hotel companies, even though they say they're not related to the boss.
Yeah.
The mob bosses, they might be. Whatever. Well, let's get back to this minute. It's a really, really fun minute. I like the back and forth between Nick and Mr. Big because that means you know that they have a history with each other.
Yes, indeed.
Suspicious history.
Yeah, so this picks up kind of as Mr. Big had been addressing Nick here, because Nick, remember, sold Mr. Big a skunk butt rug and disrespected him, and this is what's going on here. So we pick up in this conversation. He was just saying that he buried his grandmama in that skunk butt rug, and the first thing I noticed, which is kind of funny, is that really big polar bear, Kozlov, or whatever his name is, crosses himself.
Yes.
So we've brought this up before. Is there religion in the world of Zootopia? And I thought this was very interesting. He legitimately does the sign of the cross on his chest, and he looks up.
and it goes back to that joke we made in previous minutes, furry Jesus.
It does. So he's crossing himself in the name of furry Jesus.
Which is strange because I've seen a lot of criticisms of the Netflix film Bright, I guess. I have not seen the movie.
I haven't seen it yet either.
But one of the criticisms is, if this is a world of magic, how is there still Christianity? Apparently, Christianity is still in the world of Bright. But the fact that one guy all of a sudden could do these miracles, raise people from the dead, feed fishes, and all that basically rise from his tomb and whatnot would not be that spectacular in the world of magic and wands and elves and orcs and stuff. So people say that's kind of bad world building when you look at alternative history. So in this context, how would Christianity still work? Because for us, the idea of crossing our chests, like even me as a non-Christian, it's kind of become like a cultural sign now. It has nothing to do with religious, but it does have religious roots. So yeah, the thing is, it does have religious roots. So there has to be something to draw from. So even if it's not a religious sign in this movie, it still comes from somewhere. So we could potentially say that there was a furry Christianity in this world, or that there was a furry some other. Well, I mean, in the movie Cars,
dude,
too,
you know, there's got to be
car.
specifically like furry Christian art out there on the internet.
I think we discussed that in previous minutes. It was Jesus was a lion in all these artworks.
Yeah, but not even that, like not even as a persona, but like specifically, you know, like people's personas praying and stuff like that. Like there's that one viral image of like an MS Paint drawing of Tails from Sonic praying in a church.
There's actually a really good digital painted that looks like oil paintings of Naruto praying with Jesus, and they're really well done.
Really well done. Strange concept, but really well done. So to address what you were saying about would there be Christianity in a world of magic, in medieval times, Christianity was basically the religion in Europe, right? But a lot of those people did believe in magic at the same time, or more specifically, magic
Alchemy.
was kind of viewed as witchcraft, right? It was an evil force. It was somehow bending nature to your will, and part of the reason that was viewed as evil is that that's something that only God should do.
Not necessarily evil. In fact, actually, it's part of the book series. I actually was scripting right before we did this call, but the idea of magic being something that's considered supernatural is actually more of a modern conception that developed with the Golden Dawn and Hermetic secret societies of the 19th century. In fact, back then, magic was seen as just another form of philosophy, science, and art. In fact, that's where we get the word the arts from. Magic was referred to as the arts. So in fact, back then, just simply painting a picture was actually considered magic.
Right. Well, okay, so man, this makes me think of your transformative art panels that you do at cons and stuff. But the thing is, if magic, think about it this way, if magic existed, then that would mean that it's a phenomena that exists in the natural world. So by definition, it isn't supernatural, right? It would have to be something you could explain with science. Like by definition, if it's a thing that happens, it exists, and therefore it's observable and describable. So it is scientific.
It's a weird concept. Like, you're right. If in a world of magic will be treated as equal to science, there would be fundamental principles, fundamental laws that we could experiment with.
It makes me think about Full Metal Alchemist.
But okay, we're going way off
a little
topic.
bit off track here. A little bit off track. Again, this started because this polar bear is crossing himself.
Crossing his chest.
Obviously, this is not something the writers are thinking deeply about, right? Most likely, this is a visual gag they're doing in the moment, which is funny. It is funny.
Actually, Simul and I, we actually do love talking about these topics, like before and after we are recording these episodes. So if you actually like to see maybe like another podcast where we just talk about this stuff, let us know. But
no promises, but
going back to Zootopia, actually the thing that happened before the crossing the chest that kind of bugged me was Mr. Big says he buried his grandmama in that skunk butt rug. So did he bury her in that rug knowing that it was a skunk butt rug, or after the fact?
yeah, like why? Why did you bury her in that?
Yeah, like at that point, I'm like, you can't really blame Nick. If you knew it was a skunk buck rug, you'd either take her out of it or you don't bury her in to begin with.
So I didn't think about this in the last minute, but when you think about it, if you're using just the fur from the butt of one skunk, it would be a really small rug, which would make sense because they're shrews. They're really tiny. And man, how... Okay, here's a question.
All right.
This comes to mind now. Do you still bury a shrew 6 feet underground in terms of literal feet, 12 inches, or is it proportional to their size, so it'd be more like 6 inches?
Well, he say he buried her 6 feet under?
No, he just says he buried her.
Yeah, I probably don't think he buried her that deep.
Because imagine that. That'd be a lot of digging just for the shrews to do. It'd be like a really long tunnel grave.
But also that would actually
into the
save
ground.
up on space that you'll have to buy for a graveyard plot in a
Yeah.
cemetery.
I
Because
suppose
I know in Japan, like it's a densely populated country to the point that grave space is a very very high commodity. In fact, after generations over, if someone doesn't pay for the upkeep of the graves, they basically just
exhume.
exhume them, dump the bodies out, and then put new people in. And other points, they even just bury bodies on top of each other. So if one body's buried 6 feet under, they'll bury the next one 5 feet, 4 feet, to the point that sometimes you have like 6 or more bodies just stacked on top of each other.
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
It's kind of unpleasant to think about. All right, let's move past this, 'cause we do have like the majority of the minute remaining here. So Mr. Big continues after Kozlov is crossing his chest here. He says,
I told you never to show your face here again. But here you are, snooping around with this.
and here he looks at Judy. This is sort of the first time he's acknowledging Judy in the whole conversation, and he goes,
What are you, a performer? What's with the costume?
sort of gesturing with his hands. That's another thing I really like about Mr. Big in this scene, and I'm sure, again, this must still be referencing The Godfather, but he has a lot of interesting hand gestures. He does that, like, okay sign with his hand, which I guess these days a lot of people associate that with Trump, but, you know, it's kind of moving his hands around as he's talking.
What are you, a performer? What's with the costume?
Thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I like that he said, "Are you a performer?" because it's a nicer way to say what he probably thinks Judy is.
Oh, darn, you're right.
Because
he probably
it
thinks
reminds-
she's a prostitute.
Oh my god, this is a PG show, okay?
No, it isn't.
No.
This has never been a PG show. We've
So,
never made that
actually,
claim.
When I first saw this part in the movie, my mind instantly jumped to the first episode of Matt Smith's Doctor Who run, 11th Hour.
Yeah.
When he meets Amy Pond's character in that show, she's also dressed as a cop. In fact, very, very similar outfit to what Judy is
Amy
wearing.
Pond's character, a.k.a. Amy Pond.
Yes. And he thinks she's a real cop until she points out, no,
Right.
she's
a
dressed up
kissogram.
because she's a kissogram. And it's like, oh, so that's also a fancy way to say performer.
Oh,
like
no,
what Mr.
Judy's
Big
a
is saying.
stripper.
So
Judy's a stripper.
it's funny that in both instances, you have a female character dressed up as a cop, and one of them is referred to as a kissogram, and the other one's referred to as a performer. Very, very nice PG words for what
Oh, dang.
probably
That's-
what they are.
That's spooky. That's weird to think about.
Did you not think about that? What did you think performer meant before?
I must have thought about it and then forgot about it again, and now you've brought it up again, because that does make sense. Why else would he be asking that question? It's like she's got the handcuffs and everything.
Ooh.
Like, this is the type of crowd that Nick associates himself with,
This is the type
usually,
of stuff
maybe.
you'll see on like Fur Fendi.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. See, that
Okay.
this raises questions about, is that an industry in Zootopia? And is
I'm
there much like
sure it
cross-species stuff going on here? Like
You know what they say? Prostitution's the world's oldest profession.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
all right,
That's creepy. I don't know if we should dwell on that too long
Yeah,
either, but that's certainly a thought. Wow.
Okay.
It goes back to
Let's-
that comic, that the quote unquote pro-life comic.
Which is funny because when I look up Zootopia on YouTube now, hoping to get our channel or the Zootopia movie, actually one of the first thing that pops up is the Bible Reloaded's reading of the Zootopia pro-life comic. So.
That's amazing.
Okay, they go back, Judy reviews, no, I'm a cop, I'm on the case, and Mr. Big, in the presence of a cop, doesn't really seem too fazed. He's just like, yeah.
No, I figure he's probably dealt with cops before.
Yeah.
Though before it's outright revealed she's a cop. Judy tries to say, look, sir, I am a cop, but Nick actually interrupts. Mime! She's a mime! And this mime cannot speak. you can't speak if you're a mime, because Nick knows what he's doing. Nick is trying to shut Judy up because she's being stupid by saying, hey, I'm a cop. I'm talking to a mob boss, and it should be clear, like, dude, you don't reveal you're a cop in the presence of a mob boss. So Nick is just kind of face palming at this point.
Yeah, my dad, when he was working with the Oakland PD, yeah, he said that's a really bad idea to be like the only cop in an alley full of gang members.
Yeah, so she's like, no, I'm a cop. Nick does this sort of face palm. She like whips out that picture of Emmett Otterton real quickly, says, look, I'm on the Emmett Otterton case. We have evidence that puts him in your car, so you can intimidate me all you want. And she gets real close to him. The camera angle kind of changes, and she gets right up in his face kind of and says, I'm going to find out what you did to that otter if it's the last thing I do. Which is ironic because it seems like, you're talking to a mob boss. It might be the last thing you do.
Yeah, but on the other hand, even if he is a very powerful mob boss, if a cute bunny, as cute as she is, she's giant, and if she like kind of leans forward very, very close to a small face, I would be freaked out.
She could just very quickly like literally smash him.
Or bite his nose off with her big buck teeth.
Ah, ouch.
Yeah, see?
I mean, she's a cop. She's a good person.
I mean, if they want to be animals, animals are a bit savage in nature, so...
And rabbits probably do kill mice occasionally, don't you think? I don't know.
I know rats do. That's why even though rats and mice are really, really cute pets, you cannot keep them
together,
together, because I think it's called mousicide, where a rat will just instinctively kill mice.
Yeah, and it's not a predatory thing. It's more of like a territorial and just like a taking care of a nuisance kind of thing. So that's kind of weird. But yeah, I mean, obviously Mr. Big is not phased. Mr. Big has probably dealt with cops before. He's like at the top of an organized crime pyramid, presumably. So I'm sure he's used to this. He knows how to deal with cops.
In fact, he's probably more thinking, oh, she's new, she's not initiated, because you don't become that powerful without having connections with the local. PD. So
it's like, you must be new here, lady. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll just ice you. It's fine. Just get over with.
Yeah, so Mr. Big, in response to that, kind of grunts, goes, meh, and says, then I only have one request. Say hello to Grandmama. And then suddenly his expression completely changes. He like gets this angry look, glares up at one of the other polar bears and says, ice 'em, which is a mob expression, meaning kill them, presumably.
Okay, I was wondering if that was a reference to like The Godfather or Goodfellas.
I don't know if it came from one of those films originally. I feel like that's just a colloquialism at this point.
Do you think for this movie, they actually planned for them to be in Tundra Town just to get away with the ice 'em pun?
That's a really good question, because is there really any reason for it to be... Wait, hold on. Did this movie kind of tour us through every single district?
Yes.
Yeah, essentially, I think. So maybe they're like, hey, we've got all these districts. We need some in Tundra Town here. So
again, I think it's like we said in the previous minute, if the movie was originally had a different storyline and each of these districts played a bigger role. And they already like built up the entire worlds behind them, the CGI and whatnot. And it's like, well, we don't want to waste this stuff. We just have to.
Yeah, like we have all these sets that we want to use.
Yeah,
we got to use this for something.
But again, it seems weird that a tiny shrew that has very, very small body heat would be in a tundra area. Like it would make sense for the polar bears, but not for a shrew.
Mm-hmm. That's funny. Well, he does yell up ice 'em, and the polar bears now kind of grab Nick and Judy and lick them up, and Nick is going, whoa, 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 oh my gosh, and Judy's like stepping away. All these polar bears are coming at her. They pick them up. Nick says, look, I didn't see nothing. I'm not saying anything. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to say anything at all. Mr. Big responds, and you never will, as the polar bears pull back the carpet that's on the ground to reveal a trap door, which they open up to reveal this horrifying pit down into an icy pool below them. Like it's just a bunch of ice floating in water. I don't know. Is that a river, a lake? Have they built this mansion like on top of an ice flow, or?
It's kind of, well, okay. So we're assuming that this is their way of disposing people or animals. So like, I'm guessing they shoved them in there and closed the door so they can't get back out. So they'll naturally freeze and drown in that ice. So wouldn't there be a bunch of dead bodies floating there? And what happens if they float outside to, I don't know, like
there might be a current
river?
That takes them away.
Yeah, or and
But
then people...
that's a liability.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're
or-
supposed to like cement their shoes first, right?
Or maybe they're like just stuck in that one area, so there will be like a lot of dead bodies on. But it's also grim to think about. This is a kids movie, and you're seeing your two main protagonists about to die.
Hey, it's not a kids movie. It's a family movie. There is a difference.
It's about family.
Right? No, this is a good place to bring this up because a good analogy for this, or not an analogy necessarily, but another example is My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, that community we both kind of come from, where Lauren Faust, when she was designing the show, said a lot of kids shows these days suck and it's awkward for parents to watch them with their kids because they're just so saccharine and like watered down that it's just, there's nothing interesting for a parent to do in that situation. Lauren Faust never designed the show to be solely for kids. It was all about being something that kids could watch with their parents without the parents feeling awkward. And that's why in movies like this, you get those adult references that only the adults in the audience are going to laugh at some of these jokes, and the kids are going to laugh at different jokes.
Yeah, but again, it's for a Disney all-age family movie, let's say. It is kind of grim that your two main heroes are about to be killed by a mob boss in this scene.
I don't think it's uncommon in Disney movies, though.
It's not uncommon, but it's like, it is kind of grim to think about. Maybe it's just because I've been watching a lot of Netflix shows about
maybe it's a gruesome
murders and
way
crime.
to die.
It's a gruesome way to die. Like, the idea of drowning in an icy pool is really, really grim. And who knows, this might be the end of our podcast because we don't know what happens to them.
Yeah, it's a short movie. That's it. Do you know what the best thing to do is if you're in cold water and there's the threat of hypothermia?
What?
So a lot of people kind of would think, try to swim to safety or whatever. Yeah, if there's land within reach, go for that. But actually, the way you're supposed to sit in the water is you should basically turn yourself into a vertical pole. Just put your arms and legs snap down straight to your sides. That minimizes the surface area of your body exposed to the water. Because when you are hypothermic, the heat kind of retreats away from your extremities. The blood flow is kind of redirected to your core. And so it's just a good way to preserve the heat around your vital organs and all that, is to sort of remain like a straight pole like that.
Too bad Leonardo DiCaprio didn't listen to you.
Poor Leo. Has he won an award yet?
Yeah, he won one for The Revenant.
That's right.
So, oh yeah, and the Oscars are coming up by the time you are listening to this. The Oscars will have been announced, and we will report back to you when Disney wins any awards. So we're expecting Disney to win some awards, but especially for Coco. Coco was a very good movie, so go out and watch that.
Yes. Well, that trapdoor does get flipped up. There is that icy death looming below them. Nick is like, please, please. Judy says, put me down. And then Nick, this is kind of funny. Nick says, no. Look, if you're mad about the rug, I've got more rugs. Which I feel like that's not the best thing to say. Like, if that's the reason Mr. Big got angry in the first part.
It's like,
also,
where is he
why do
getting
you have
these
more
rugs from?
rugs?
Yeah. Where's he skinning these people from?
You know what I want to see? I want to see Nick's like apartment or house or where he lives. I bet that'd be interesting.
It's in the concept art book, actually.
Ooh. Do you have that? Let's look at that later. I'm sure there'll be another opportunity.
It's very, very messy.
Oh, I imagine. Yeah, no kidding. All right. Well, the very last thing that happens before our minute ends is these two, Nick and Judy, are about to be dropped into the icy pool below when suddenly a somewhat familiar character appears kind of out of nowhere. We hear, "Oh, Daddy, it's time for our..." And that's where the dialogue ends. But what we do see is Mr. Big whips his head around. We actually see his actual eyes for the first time because his eyebrows are so bushy they've been covering it up. And we see a familiar character from earlier. Who do we see, Choco?
We see the little shrew that Judy saved from the giant donut, whose name is Frou Frou.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. That back at minute 30, which was one of our live minutes that we did at Everfree, actually.
Fun.
Yeah, so this is interesting. We have continuity here. We have a character that presumably was just going to be, a random side character that's not vital to the plot at all, but she's showing up again.
Well, it's a trope called Chekhov's gun. If you reference a gun on the wall in the first chapter, it'll eventually go off. So if you have a one-off character that seems to have no other role aside from that one moment, you could expect that character might return again.
Yep, it's a very important literary device, basically. A lot of times in writing and in movies, things aren't going to be mentioned in detail unless they are important later on. Otherwise, there's not really a reason to mention them at all. So this is interesting. We do have this character back, and we'll have to see what happens if maybe something happens to save Nick and Judy, if they really do fall into the water. We don't know. You'll have to tune into minute 50, which is coming up next, the big 5-0. That's a milestone for us.
Yes, 5-0. We finally made it to minute 50 next time, but we'll save all the special stuff for then.
Yes, indeed.
All right, so yeah, you could be looking forward to our next episode, which will be minute 50, the big 50. But we might have a little break in between this episode and next because I will be going back to Carlsbad, California for my military academy reunion. It's the 10th reunion of our graduating class, so we'll be excited to see old friends again. But we will return strong with minute 50, and we will have a big surprise for you then.
Yes, indeed. Hey, plug your book, because you wrote a whole book about going to that place.
Oh yeah, so so I wrote a book actually about my military academy and actually all the military schools of the West Coast. It's called The West Point in the West: The History of the Army Navy Academy. So feel free to check that out. It's on Amazon, and if you like the book, feel free to give it a good review. We're not sponsored by Amazon, so we don't have any Amazon codes to give you.
That's just where you can get the book most easily.
Yeah, just go out and check out my book. And it's also registered in the Library of Congress. I found that funny. I was looking through the Library of Congress yesterday, and I found that my book is registered through them, and that Yale and Harvard and Stanford have my book in their libraries. So I thought that was kind of cool.
That is really cool. I like that. All right, cool. So you guys can look forward to that coming up soon. Thank you guys so much for sticking with us for this long. That is going to be it for this episode of Zootopia Minute. If you did enjoy the podcast, please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Twitter at Zootopia Minute, like us on Facebook, and if you have any thoughts you want to share with us about anything we've talked about in this minute or past minutes, you can send those thoughts over to zootopiaminute@gmail.com. We are always happy to hear from you. All right, guys, so that's going to be it. We will see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.